Hey everyone, welcome to the weekend edition of The Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I am the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me today, well, we've got two of the three commentators joining me right now. First up, Brooke Cheney. Let me bring her up solo here. Brooke is with a Great Start Shooting School out of Connecticut. Also, Brooke, you're prominent in the DC project.
Yes. However, big news, there's a change. I've gone from being the state director to the state assistant director, and we have moved Mary Forges into the director position here in Connecticut.
Very cool. We had Mary on the Polite Society podcast a little over a week ago. I got to tell you, her story is one extremely powerful story. I had a very memorable time interviewing that young lady. She's going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Those were my thoughts exactly just now, quite honestly. She's going to be amazing, and I'm super excited. I had just completed my 2-year directorship, and Mary came along, and she's super passionate. She can't wait to grow the chapter here in Connecticut, and it's just going to be so much fun to be there with her as she goes.
All right. Also joining us, John Crump. You've read John's stuff. If you look at AmmoLand at all, John is very prominent in Second Amendment media. His stuff appears quite often in Second Amendment rights media. John, thanks for joining us today, man. Oh, I lost your audio, John. Let me see here. Look on my end. Don't know why, but I don't have audio from you, man. Wow.
Technical challenges. He was saying he was having a challenge before we got started.
Well, and we had audio from him before we got started.
We did, but then he changed his headset out. So I don't know. We should be able to hear him though. But we can talk to Mike now since Mike showed up. Hopefully we can hear him.
Yeah, joining us fresh from Florida, and a changing of the guard ceremony. And there he is. And now, Mike, you were being chased around by a bottle of Jameson on Thursday. Were you able to wrestle that thing down and get it tamed, or is Jameson still chasing you around today?
He's still chasing me, but it's more of like, we're right now we're making up. I was a little aggressive the other day. He was a little aggressive on Thursday. I was a little aggressive on Friday. Today's makeup day. So.
Okay. All right.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you now, John.
Okay. Not really sure what happened there.
Live television, man, or live internet broadcast. It's you get to watch the sausage being made. Technical difficulties happen.
Sausage.
Yeah.
I prefer bacon. Bacon is better than sausage.
There you go.
Bacon makes everything better. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of sausage.
You know what? Chorizo. If you're going for sausage, go chorizo, man. Let's get started on the Second Amendment stories, and I think the big story of the week, and it actually kind of dovetails from late last week. Ohio officially becomes constitutional carry state number 23, dovetailing right into that one. Florida does not get into the constitutional carry group of states this year. We've still got, I think 3 or 4 states. We've got Georgia, we've got Nebraska, we've got Indiana that are still in that, and Maryland is on the very outside shot of, there's still an active bill in Maryland that could make Maryland constitutional carry. Yeah, we'll see if that happens, but there are 3 states with a real possibility of becoming constitutional carry yet this year. But, Ohio did it. Florida did not do it, and we're still kind of wait and see on 3 more. why don't we go ahead, John? I want to start with you because you wrote up an article this week detailing your thoughts on Florida and did the NRA have something to do with Florida not getting constitutional carry? I want to start with you, man.
I don't think the NRA had anything to do with Florida. The NRA, they did have something to do with VALA being passed, but constitutional carry in Florida, I think there is a lot of anti-gun groups that concentrate a lot of money in Florida, and they actually give money to some of the Republicans in Florida. Florida's a weird state when it comes to gun rights and Republicans. It seems like the Republicans get in the way of themselves when it comes to gun rights in Florida, and it's always been that way. They have a lot of what people call rhinos in Florida, and I'm not really sure why that is, but they just do.
Yeah, I apologize. Dan Waz was the one that wrote the article about Florida Republicans and what happened there.
Yeah, the Florida Republicans, they're a weird bunch when it comes to Republicans compared to, like, I live in Virginia, and if we had the majority in the Senate, I can guarantee you constitutional carry would pass because the Republicans in Virginia are very pro-gun, but in Florida, they're not so much pro-gun.
Right. Mike, you and I talked at length on Thursday about this. Any further thoughts on the? Let's break it down with Nebraska and Indiana and Georgia. They're the three that still could go constitutional carry. Any thoughts with those?
Yeah, I think Indiana will probably get it. You know, we saw the backlash there from the Indiana State Police Director, and he got up and spoke. Well, then we saw on the flip side, some chiefs of police and some sheriffs also came out and in favor of. So I think Indiana, we may see that one go through. The Florida one, I had to kind of give a little quick history on Florida and what's going on down there is, we do have, unfortunately, a ton of rhinos, and they all come from South Florida, which, listen, if you've ever been to Florida, Dade, Broward, and even Palm Beach County now might as well be their own state. In fact, Miami, I've been at the table before in the governor's office when I've seen Miami tell the governor they're not doing it because we're bigger than you. And then watch the repercussions of that fall out. Now that's been a couple of years ago, but seen that happen. Republicans in Florida, the way they gain office, the way they gain local office, at the county level to get the good positions, the mayors or county chairs, is first they go off to the state office. I don't know how they come up with this design. But they do the little local cities. Then they move on to state legislator or state senator, and then from there they come back to the county and want to be the big mayor of the big cities or of the county. Our counties either have mayors or chairpersons. It's interchangeable depending on which county you're in. But they get that statewide name recognition. Then they come back to South Florida and run. And predominantly in South Florida, still what we see is we still see a lot of Republicans down there in the older Spanish generation, the older Cuban generation, that middle generation there, that second generation Hispanic is tending to be blue and be Democrat. And now we're starting to see a mix in that third generation because they see what it's like to watch what's going on in Venezuela again and throughout Central America to see what happens when you get your Second Amendment rights taken. But the Hispanic legislator or the legislator that wants to be the mayor or the chairperson down in South Florida is afraid of the guns. They're afraid of the Second Amendment. It makes them look bad. Broward County is the listen, might as well be the national headquarters for the Democratic Party. We know that's where Deborah Wasserman Schultz is as the party chair. That's where Hillary Clinton headquarters has always been, in the South. And they're afraid to mention guns. So any of those politicians coming out of South Florida, Republican or Democrat, won't touch the gun issue except for that one weird elite, sticking around older Cuban generation that came over after the revolution and after the Bay of Pigs. So it's like John nailed that. It's a very odd group down there, and we have our other legislators throughout the state that are kind of afraid to go up against them. I will give the senator, the legislator that put forth this, Anthony Sabatini, did a wonderful job, wrote up a wonderful bill, but had some, of all places, had some pushback from the gun rights organizations here in Florida because they don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. I'll say a couple of things. So they didn't throw their support behind it, which is kind of the Second Amendment group shooting themselves in the back here in Florida.
Amen.
Yeah. Well, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Mike, what do you think about, there was a petition given over to a Republican representative down there and the legislature for constitutional carry, and they threw it in the trash, literally threw it in the trash. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and listen, and without a name, I don't know who you're referring to or which one you're talking about, because I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't happen every day in Florida.
I put a YouTube video up of the actual of the. I got a video of one of the guys getting the petition. I'll send it to you, and he turned around and threw it in the trash.
Yeah, I'll tell you that. And I don't know who it was written by, John, but if it was by Sabatini, a couple of the other groups. Listen, Sabatini is as conservative as conservatives could get, as far right as right could get, without being the wackos. He's not there. He's just a very conservative, very strict constitutionalist, a fellow Army officer. He's an attorney as well. Not as well as me, just an attorney. He's very pro-law enforcement and very pro-military, and some of that pro-law enforcement stance of his, that's what's kind of put him on the outside with some of the pro-2A organizations. And that's just a weird Florida anomaly, by the way. That's you don't usually run into that problem, but Florida has that issue. And they see him kind of as aggressive. Other legislators, they see him as aggressive. They think that he's here to move forth and go to the big house up in Washington. The Capitol building, not the White House, but and he probably will. I believe he's announced for a new congressional seat that they've redistricted down here. But he's very big and very conservative, and I know that upsets a lot of people that are very happy sitting on the fence. And like you pointed out, we have that problem down here.
All right, Brooke, you're kind of quiet up there. I want to get your and Brooke, of course, in Connecticut, you have zero chance of getting constitutional carry. Matter of fact, you're kind of hoping the Supreme Court helps you get shall issue up there. But what are your thoughts on the states that are still hoping for constitutional carry, and those are that may have just got it or are working towards it? What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I think one of the important things about Florida is the fact that it just highlights how the Second Amendment and fighting for freedom is not a nonpartisan issue, in that it doesn't matter if you have Republicans or Democrats. If they're not going to focus on freedom and our rights, then they're not going to help us. So a lot of people think, well, if you're Republican, then you're going to get everything that you want because they're freedom loving and want smaller government. But that's not always going to be the case. So as someone who was a clueless person when it came to voting ever, after in Connecticut here, we've just had a horrible bill come forward. But it's like, you have to pay attention to the single issue. You're never going to find that politician that does everything you want them to do. So to me, freedom is the most important thing. So for all the folks that voted no for Florida, if you can, vote against them. If you can't, run against them, because we need to replace people who will not fight for our freedoms. So that's what I'm hoping, is that people will start realizing it's the ballot box that matters, regardless of whether the NRA or any other 2A groups are in there. Because like Don was just saying about how some places didn't even support going forward with it. So it's our ballot box. Go ahead.
Let me clarify on that. And you're absolutely right, Brooke. And it ties something that John said in, and I forgot to mention. The those politicians in Florida that are up there in the Capitol now and they're coming back to South Florida, they're doing that with Bloomberg money in their pocket. They're doing that with anti-gun group money in their pocket. That's clear. They've been called on it several times, and every time that they're confronted about it, they say, "Well, that's what my constituents want." And I don't know how you argue with that. With that, when they say, and when the constituents down there really are, I mean, you have this group of conservatives that really gun rights is no priority for them. So it's hard to argue when they say that. However, I would vote them out, and they do end up getting voted out when they get down to local office. They get opposed. The problem is that it never even came out of committee. So all the other Republicans in the state House and the state Senate never even got to vote for it because it never makes it out of committee. They hold it in committee, so it never even gets to a floor vote.
We have got.
Yeah, well, this is
Go ahead.
one of the things we talk about all the time in the DC project is the fact that you need to be the one talking to them and asking them that question. So even if you don't want to go look up their voting rights, you will know, hey, do you support a person's right to self-defense? Because we've found in the past, if you ask somebody if they support the Second Amendment, tell me if this sounds familiar. I support the Second Amendment, but and then they tell you all the reasons why you need a background check and this and that and everything else. So we've gotten better at asking questions. And as far as plugging stuff, I'm going to show everyone to go to the dcproject.info because you can sign up for how to have a useful conversation, because that's super important to understand. We want to have the conversation with our actual politicians and really nail them down on how are you protecting my freedoms? How are you protecting my rights versus just asking if they support the Second Amendment?
I want to get some comments in here because we've gotten, I'm not going to be able to get all the comments in. We've gotten far too many in. I'm going to be able to get a few in, but wow, have you guys been commenting? And thank you for doing that. But let me get a few in to start with. Pete over at Gun Website says, wait and see about constitutional carry in these states. Why not? Let's get in the game. In my opinion, opportunity here to work together and show others what we can do and how much we care about these issues. Pete, in most of these states, it's a case of you need to get in touch with the governor, with the exception of Maryland, where it's still in the legislature. But in Nebraska, it's still in the legislature, and in Maryland, it's still in the legislature. But in Georgia and in Indiana, it's absolutely a governor's call right now. So you need to be getting your word to the governor that you want this. Let me go up to some other comments here.
I mean, here in Connecticut, we just had it where it's the grassroots groups that really make the difference. In Connecticut, we have CCDL. And on Wednesday of last week, we got an email that then said, hey, here's what's coming on Monday. And they went to all the gun stores, as many as they could in town, and had people signing petitions, and not signing petitions, signing actual letters of why we support or don't. So it's like the grassroots, like I forget, Mike, if it was you or John who said that, they weren't behind the constitutional carry because they didn't like a piece of it. And it's just like, no, like you said, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. We got to get over that kind of stuff.
That's me. Yeah.
I
No, you're right.
agree.
You're right. It's almost like our grassroots organization need a grassroots organization. That's what we've got down in Florida.
There you go. When we talked about the petitions being thrown away, John commented, it was written by GOA. The staffer threw it out when they walked away, and it was caught on camera trying to explain it when GOA reps walked back in the office while not being represented, and we should all be extremely angry about it.
Yeah, I think it was GOA, but it was also like a Hispanic gun group as well. It was written by two different groups, came together and wrote it.
And it's also very disheartening is that those of us who take the time to stand up and fight, and those of us who watch the halls of our capitals get filled by gun owners and then see a handful of anti-gun people show up, and yet the anti-gun stuff comes forward anyway, it's very hard to stay in the game because it feels like we're always being denied.
Yeah.
And listen, I agree. Listen, it's time to out them for sure every day. And the problem, I think we all show up, and sometimes they show up a little bit stronger, but they show up with a bag of cash, and it's hard to fight a bag of cash when you have no scruples to begin with. And that's just the kind of politicians you get in some cities, and that's what we have going on in South Florida. We a lot of the corruption that left in the Northeast in the 70s made its way to politics in Dade and Broward County, and it still exists down there. And I can tell you from having worked in the state that it's quite frequent down there, and it's hard to fight. Not that it's unwinnable, but it's very intense. There's a lot of intricacies involved with it. Because Florida doesn't have recall elections either, so we don't even have that tool available to us. I think the one thing that we're looked at, and it's being pumped, and I think maybe the grassroots might get there with this, is we want the governor to call that special session to come back and address this. Governor DeSantis, Captain Florida, we call him, by the way, down here. Captain Florida has got the juice to call them back in. He's done it once already, prior to this session. He could do it again come here soon.
One more comment, then I want to make a comment of my own. Sandhills Media says national gun groups are mucking things up here in Nebraska, just like Florida. I haven't been following that one as closely as I should, but I want to make a personal plea, and that is this: if you live in a state where your state level representatives aren't doing what you think they should, I want to encourage you to do this. And this is the time of year to do it, and this is the year to do it, because usually in most states it's even numbered years, and this is the time of year to do it. I want you to go down to your local courthouse, and I want you to file to run for your state representative or state senate. And then I want you to go start knocking on doors. And I want you to say, I believe in you. I believe in your right to self-defense. I want constitutional carry in our state. I'm running for state house. I'm running for state senate in this district. I would appreciate your vote. It will cost you virtually nothing. You can do it for less than a couple $100. And what's going to happen is something very much like in New Jersey when Steve Sweeney got ousted by a guy who spent $250, and the state, the president of the state senate got ousted by a truck driver who spent a couple $100 and a few weekends knocking on doors. The only problem with that is a few of you are going to have to put in some shoe leather and a little bit of, you're going to have to drink some energy drink, and you're going to have to get your voice working. You're going to have to go out. You're going to have to be nice to people. You're going to have to meet people. And you're going to have to say, hey, neighbor, I like you. I believe in you. And you don't have to win. All you got to do is get about 5 to 10% of the vote. And all of a sudden, when the election comes around and this state representative realizes they almost lost their job because they didn't push for constitutional carry, guess what will happen next time? They're going to be a champion for it.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
It's very true. The door knocking is super important. I would not be as active as I am in the political system had our first selectman not come and knocked on our door. I kept him here for 45 minutes. I'm sure that was not his plan then, but I became the Republican Town Committee chair from that. I've actually held office multiple times in our town, and I go to DC with the DC project and talk to our reps and everything. And I went from being a no information voter who didn't even vote in the presidential election because I didn't know enough to this past election. Not only did I vote for all the people I knew, they all knew my name in my face. And so when I came around, they would talk to me and be like, hey, Brooke, how you doing? And they know that Second Amendment is super important to me. And the DC project, that's what we're here for, is to make those relationships so you actually know where you stand when it comes to your Second Amendment rights. So go door knocking, run for office. Anyone can do it.
Yeah. You might win. You might. The worst problem you could have is, oh, wait a minute, I won? Holy cow, what am I going to do now? You know?
Yeah, it's a little bit of extra money in your pocket.
Yeah. And all of a sudden you've got it's not in South Dakota, you're paid I think it's $7,000 for 2 months of work. So you're not going to make a lot of money on it.
No.
Yeah, no, it's all volunteer at the state. For us, it's all volunteer at our town level. 99% of the stuff. So yeah, you don't get any extra money for running or winning. Because I currently won. I am whatever it's called. I'm on boards. So yeah, you don't make any money. You just lose your time.
All right, we've already burned up almost half of the show talking about constitutional carry. I do want to move on a little bit, and we did have, again, this wasn't this week, it was late last week, we had the Violence Against Women Act snuck into the omnibus spending bill. John, you did write about this one.
And such a lie in the
yes,
title, which is start there.
Yes.
Yeah, it definitely is. They entitled it the Violence Against Women's Act because who's going to vote for violence for women against women, you know? And that was the whole thing. The gun control that they snuck in there is a few different things. One is the NICS Notification Act, which means everyone gets investigated as a criminal if you get denied by NICS. I know the NRA, not bashing the NRA, but they said we couldn't find information on NICS denials being wrong and anything like that. But if you just do a Google search, it will come up to an FBI paper, a DOJ paper too, which shows that it was 94.7%. So in my response to the NRA, I wrote an article in response to them because the NRA they went neutral on the bill. I listed that statistic and linked to the DOJ's webpage. I just think they were caught with their pants down on the bill. Okay, so we have that. They also allow for deputization of local law enforcement. The reason why they do that is because of all these Second Amendment protection acts going around the country that prevents local law enforcement from enforcing federal gun law. Now they can just say, hey, we're deputizing them, so they're not acting as local law enforcement. They are acting as federal law enforcement. Therefore, the Second Amendment Protection Act does not apply to them anymore. So that was another thing. And there's a bunch of funding for anti-gun research. If you read Miguel Faria's book, Dr. Miguel Faria, he was the whistleblower for the CDC that said they came up with predetermined conclusions before they did their gun control research. That's going to happen again. So those are three of the things that are in there that are very anti-gun. And I know Second Amendment Foundation was against it. GOA was against it. FPC was against it. NAGR was against it. But for some reason, the NRA ILA went neutral on it. That really makes me mad.
Paul,
Yeah.
I get John, a couple of those things are the first two you're talking about. First off, I'm no fan of the NRA right now. Until they get their house in order, they're not getting another dime from me. That's just, and I've said that flat out on record over and over again. Get your house in order, then you can come talk to me about mine. The NICS Denial Act, or whatever provision they're calling about it. I'm not. Listen, everybody knows I'm on record. Listen, Paul and I are about the same. I think I should be able to get a machine gun out of a vending machine or get one delivered on Amazon by 8 a.m. if I want it. That's how pro Second Amendment I am. However, if we have these background checks in place, and I don't think we need background checks. I think we all know who the disqualified people are. If you're disqualified, that's it. There should be a list maintained, and there's much easier ways to do it than this background check. Background checks, the way they do this, are a method of keeping your name on file so they can start their registration database when they want. Otherwise, they'd just be doing the background check and they wouldn't log the information about the gun. But if we're going to have 7%, 10%, depending on which study you look for, that get denied, why are we not enforcing the law against those people? And I'll tell you why, because the states don't have a law that says I can go after somebody that failed a background check. All right, there is no state law. There's nothing that covers that. It's a federal form inside a state. You're committing a federal crime, a federal perjury, a federal falsehood, and the state doesn't go after and charge for that. But if you put this on the books as a crime, and it says an investigation, it doesn't say criminal investigation, it doesn't say there must be a criminal investigation, it allows for investigations to take place. So if I got a bad guy that goes into the store and applies to purchase a firearm, why can't I have that tool in the pocket to charge him with the crime? Now, we got some sheriffs down here in Florida that are pretty smart. They said, well, if he went in to go buy a gun and got denied, I can't charge him with bad application, but I can charge him with possession of a firearm by a felon during that short period of time. But why not be able to have that state level officer file that charges instead of the feds going, don't have the manpower? Why not give the feds that tool, or the state that tool?
Well, it's not giving the state the toll. It's saying that the federal authorities have to investigate it.
Well,
right, but you understand, because there's no crime other than perjury, so they're trying to make this specific act a crime.
Well, it's not making anything a crime. What it's doing is saying that there has to be an investigation where they usually go down to it and they say, okay, well, they do like a cursory look and said there's no violation. Now they can't do that. Now they have to actually open an investigation instead of.
But that's an investigation. And as somebody who's been an investigator for 20 years, that's an investigation. As long as I've done that, I think what they're trying to do is get away from not doing them at all. And listen, I've had a denial before because, listen, the state of Florida doesn't know how to read a record. When I have my security clearance background check done every couple of years, it shows active federal investigation, and I get denied when that's going on because they don't have permission. Florida is one of them states that's a single point of contact where you go to Florida and they don't know what the FBI is looking at. They just see that there's an FBI investigation, so they get denied. It happens in Florida to military members way too often. But anyway, I mean, all this does is, again, give the authorities the chance to do that. Right now, if they want to claim lack of manpower or whatever reason, I think we're just holding them accountable to actually go after and investigate felons that are doing that. Listen, this happens a lot. I can't tell you the number of times a day a guy with a warrant will come in and try and buy a $25 or $50 lower receiver because he's trying to figure out if he's got a warrant for him or not. You know, they're actively coming in and they're gaming the system. Putting this in there will keep them from gaming the system. Now, again, I say we get rid of the entire background check system. But as long as we have it, why not put the felons in jail that are committing more felonies?
Well, and
the way it works is it's going against a name to start with. My husband just bought a gun last week, and he was denied. So they have to call. They double check it with the information, then poof, he's all better. But if you're telling me every single time that happens, they're going to be like, instead of making the phone call to make sure it's fine, that they're going to open an investigation. There is no one that has the resources for that, the manpower for any of that.
I think we're redefining terms. If I pick up the phone call, that's an investigation. I've started an investigation by asking that. It doesn't have to be, I must pull a case file and take 24 hours to work this case. If I make the phone call and I'm satisfied that it's okay, investigation complete.
Yeah, but it has to go to the field.
No, it doesn't.
It's opening up so many
let me jump in here, guys.
For everybody.
This part of it is going to go absolutely positively nowhere because the straw purchases that are tiny to start with, and the straw purchases will never end. They never, ever, ever, because all it has to happen is Billy Joe Gangbanger has to go get a new girlfriend and say to the new girlfriend, "You love me, right? Why don't you go buy this Glock for me, baby? You got a clean record." And then give me the Glock. That's all that has to happen.
If people think they're going to get denied, they're not going to. If they know they have a felony or they're a prohibited person, they're not going to go try to pass a background check.
They do all the time, John. I see them do it all the time. I've got 2 FFLs. They do it all. It's like I gave you the example. This is how they come to check and see if there's an active warrant for them, because they think there might be. So they come in and wait to see if the charge went through. And if they come back denied, they know the warrant's been issued. And then they beat tail out. And they're only coming to buy a $50 lower receiver because they don't mind losing $50 rather than going to jail.
I haven't. When I used to own 2 gun stores, I haven't seen that. But maybe you have a different experience than I do with that.
Well, and Mike White says people with common names will be investigated all too often. Lathrop isn't a common name, but my wife has never been denied, but she's been delayed consistently. Yeah. Every time Susan goes to buy a firearm from an FFL, and I don't know why, but every time she gets delayed. No rhyme, no reason.
Well, I know for a fact
I understand that. Well, there might have been. She might have had a case of identity theft or something. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brooke. I'm sorry, I stepped on you.
So my mom, her name's Kathy Reynolds, and there was a time she almost got put in jail because there was a Kathy Reynolds in California with a close enough birth date and a close enough social security number that there was that mistake. And so it's just like, and that's big deal. And here we are talking about, again, Nick's going by what the common name is and how often a John Smith is going to get denials is insane. Yeah. The amount of work and the ridiculousness, again, opening the can of worms. I mean, there's worse stuff in this bill. I mean, that's just one of the pieces why omnibus bills are horrible and should never be allowed to begin with. Because this is only one piece of what we're talking about, and there's a bunch of them. I keep looking at like the whole list of stuff that's in there. And it's just, the omnibus bill should not be allowed for anything, not just Second Amendment rights, for any of it, because it's total garbage. Because like John said, with a name like, well, of course we're protecting women in this bill, but there's 5 million things that have nothing to do with protecting women.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Omnibus bills are crap, and we shouldn't allow them. But there's the one with the ability to swear in local law enforcement, and I guess maybe your view on this is different than mine, John. They already have that ability. ATF, any federal agency does this, and they do it on a daily basis. The reason this is done is if you live in No Shoe, Alabama, and you've got a 12-man police department, if you're lucky, they don't have the resources to move around outside their own community. They come in but if they join a task force, if they join a anti-gun task force, anti-gun trafficking task force, something that's against state law, but you got people running guns back and forth across city lines, county lines, state lines, the local stuck with their thumb up their butt with no ability to track that. Enforcement come in, federal law enforcement come in, and they declare a task force. Now they've crossword them. They come in with the authority and the money to help the locals to do that. Nothing in there said anything about enforcing unconstitutional gun laws. The Second Amendment Act the Second Amendment bill that is in these that it says the Second Amendment Sanctuary Act says they won't follow any federal unconstitutional gun laws. And I'm with you there, John. Listen, I think I should get my gun out of a vending machine if I want one. But as long as criminals are going to run back and forth, why take the tools away from law enforcement that doesn't have the ability? Listen, we do this with Joint Terrorism Task Force all the time. Go right there up in the Northeast, look at New York, look at DC, and every one of those Joint Terrorism Task Force are staffed mostly by local and state officers and funded by the feds, so those people have the ability to cross jurisdictional lines to make these arrests. This is, I mean, you're posing that this thing has gone out there so we can compel local law enforcement to enforce federal laws. You can't compel local law enforcement to do anything they don't want to do. That's part of the Second Amendment sanctuary status that these officers and states and chiefs and sheriffs have made sure were in the bill. It just gives them the ability to, if guns are being run across the border, the state border, the international border, that these local cops do have the authority with the cooperation of the feds to make those arrests. This is not something new. This is something that's gone on since the dawn of federal law enforcement.
Mike, you have your
example. Another example of where they create something that's already there, and so the people writing the bills don't pay attention to what's already there, and that happens all the time. It's like we have a law for that. Now we're going to make another law because we didn't know we had this law. So now we've got to all of them. And it's amazing how often they do this. And again, this is why getting involved and paying attention to what your politicians are actually doing, you and I really are their intention or their education when it comes to this stuff. And that's why it's so important for us to reach out and know them.
Mike, I want to know, do you have your blood pressure medication nearby, dude? Because, you may need it pretty soon. There you go. And DJ Play Nice, No Shoe, Alabama, population 296. But, dude, I'm telling you, they've got a killer barbecue restaurant, man.
They do. They surely do.
And I know there are some places in Wyoming, population 26. So, there's even smaller populations than that. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Right now, my wife is deployed to Sisseton, South Dakota, and that's a very, very small town.
Yeah, Sisseton's not very big. When I drove truck for a living, I used to drive through a very small town in southeastern Wyoming, and the population sign was 8, and then I drove by and one day, and the population sign changed, and it was 4, and I'm like, wow, she left him and took the kids. So
I like
anyway,
it, Paul.
Anyway, let's. We got 20 minutes left. So let's. I want to move on to one more story. Probably we've got about time for 2 more stories. Rhode Island judge rules that they had a ban on stun guns and tasers in Rhode Island, and the state did their best to try and argue that it was in the state's best public interest to keep that ban, but a judge was having none of it and ruled that basically, look, all the evidence shows it's in the public's interest to have public access to stun guns and tasers. Your ban is unconstitutional and goes against the Second Amendment. So they can no longer enforce their ban on tasers and stun guns. I know how to use firearms. I've never taken a taser class, a stun gun class, or an OC spray class. That's pepper spray or bear spray to those who may be wondering what it is, OC. But anyway, I'm not going to tell you go out in Rhode Island and buy pepper spray right now, or buy a taser, buy a stun gun, but it is an option. And please, if you're going to take that option, I would very much encourage you to get some training in its use and do some research, because a stun gun, that's a contact weapon. That's not a distance weapon. You have to actually touch somebody to use that.
Right.
I prefer to use cattle prods. But
since they're my neighbor, I think it's important, because as a woman, one of the first things we're taught in self-defense is we want to get away from somebody, right? We don't want them to get close to us. However, I do have students who have no interest in ever using their firearms as a self-defense weapon. They want to have other options. And for myself, it's one of those things where having options is good. We always want to have another way out. And if it's a stun gun or a pepper spray, as long as, like Paul said, you have the training for it, because just like firearms, they're not something you just pick up and use well or automatically. So Connecticut was ahead of Rhode Island, because we actually got that passed last year, or maybe the 2019 session, I'm not sure. But it just makes sense that one size doesn't fit all. We want to have non-lethal options, is what a lot of my students will say to me, as far as I don't really want to use my gun for self-defense, and that's okay as long as they know what they're doing with it. So I appreciate the fact that it was upheld as a freedom of choice thing, as far as how and what you're going to do to protect yourself. What were you going to say, Mike?
A quick question for you. And I know that Rhode Island's shall issue, but you guys are so close and so tight, and they're too small. How much stuff do you guys work together on? I mean, it would just, from somebody who lives in a big piece of land, I'm curious how closely you guys work together with them on this, or stuff
so
like
we
this.
Don't. I would say the grassroots New England is very much
curiosity question.
Yeah. It's one of those things where Connecticut Citizens Defense League Sometimes we'll work with Massachusetts on stuff, but for the most part, we stay within our state lines. DC Project would be the one thing where maybe we would talk to our general area. Like we'll talk to New York City or New York State,
Right.
Mass, the New England through DC Project. But as far as general legislation, a lot of times we do not do any overreach over our little tiny area, because New England's tiny and small and segregated.
It's about like down here. Now I'm from New York City. It's been a few years since I lived there, but New York City didn't reach outside of New York City. We didn't care what anybody else thought. But it's the same way with our Miami and Broward County, Fort Lauderdale here in Florida. People reach down there to see what's going on, but they don't reach out. They think they are the center of the world.
Well, I'm not sure we think we're the center of the world. It's just one of those things we have so much to fight
within New York City does. Yeah.
Well, so Lauren is our New York City state rep for DC Project. And if something is going on, just like in New Jersey as well, because, we have so many gun-friendly states up here. So we do kind of try to support each other and understand, at the very least, honestly, is helping support fundraising and helping them understand, okay, this is what's coming up next, and helping any way to raise awareness. So that is how the Northwest corner here kind of works together.
Very neat. Thank you.
Sure.
I want to bring up one point from Warsaw Patriots. Sometimes non-lethal is not avoidable. Sometimes you must use lethal force to stop attackers. You're absolutely right, but and Warsaw Patriots, sometimes lethal force is the best answer, but it's not always the only answer. I'm glad there is this option out there. I only wish the option was the more like the option I have in my home state of South Dakota, where there's very darn little that's not available to me and my wife. Pretty much anything we want to use is available to us. I wish that was the case for all the country.
It does crack me up when I go... Sorry, go ahead, John.
I just want to say that the right to bear arms, Second Amendment, does not end at guns. It goes to all sorts of self-defense, weapons and whatever, like stun guns, pepper spray, and everything else. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. And a nod to our good friends over at Knife Rights. Knives are absolutely part of the Second Amendment. People over at Knife Rights do a heck of a good job. I'm trying to remember. I think it was about a month ago we had another switchblade law that has gone by the wayside. Thank goodness.
That's in Virginia, my state.
Okay. Yeah. So talk about a silly law. A switch. Anyway, don't get me started on that. We'll go way
like
off.
I told you guys in the comments last week, it's like, ask Charlie about the gun laws the knife laws that are in Massachusetts, because it's insane.
Yeah.
It's just like 3 inches versus 4 inches. It's like, no, I mean, a knife is one of the most utilitarian things you can have. Just because you have one doesn't mean that you're going to be violent. It's one of those things. I was talking to my student today. I am not for fighting gun violence. I am for fighting violence, period. Because I don't care if you're going to take my pen and stab me in the eye. Violence is violence. It doesn't matter what you're using to purport the violence. And it's just like the fact that you keep calling it gun violence. I'm like, stop. It's violence. And that's what we need to address. And as long as we're focusing on gun violence, which is actually, when you look, some of the smallest portions of violence in America, we're missing the big picture of actually preventing violence.
All those the switchblade laws, and it's just interesting. I'm all for let's get rid of them. Knives are utility, they're tools, they're defense weapons, whatever they are. It's all covered. You should be able to defend yourself with whatever you want to. But switchblades, I bet the four of us all have 4 different definitions of what a switchblade is, and that's why there's so many weird laws concerning knives and switchblades. I don't. Paul, what's your belief? What's a switchblade?
How I would describe a switchblade. It's a folding knife that is the blade is actually activated or unfolded by pushing a button on the side, and the blade pops out and locks.
And now again in Florida, that would just be an assisted knife. Brooke, what's a switchblade by you, or what do you think a switchblade is?
To me, I always thought a switchblade is one of those knives where if you push a button, it shoots out of the handle.
See, and that's more along the lines what Florida is. And when you think about the origin of the word, I'm sorry, John, I'm not trying to leave you out. That switchblade, Florida defines it as when you activate the knife, the blade leaves the handle and launches across the room because you can switch the blade. Well, that's what it is, because you could switch the blade in the knife.
How about a worthless piece of equipment?
Yeah, absolutely. But that's why there's so many weird definitions, because I think regionally we've all grown up with what a different item is with a different term for it. So, John, what's a switchblade in Virginia? And you guys just went through this.
It is, well, they defined a switchblade in Virginia incorrectly as any automatic knife that can be automatically deployed with one hand and retracted with one hand. So if it's a single action automatic knife, that's fine. Oh, meaning you push a button and the blade pops out, but you have to reset it by your hand. What I think is stupid is laws against gravity knives.
Right.
Where you have to open it up and it falls down because it's so quick to open up and you can deploy with one hand. Although with stuff like assisted knives, it opens up faster than the gravity knives. Then you have places like in New York, where you're from, that says a gravity knife is any knife that you can deploy with one hand by a flick of the wrist, which is not what a gravity knife is.
Right.
Oh,
yeah.
And you see this in laws all the time, especially like when we had Sandy Hook and they put out these crazy amounts of laws. It's like they would not talk to a single person that owned an actual firearm. And you can tell by the way the law is written because it actually does not make sense. It is not clear, it is not concise, and it's terribly inaccurate. So it's one of those things where it's like, they already have laws for 90% of the stuff they put in those bills. Second, when you're a gun owner and you're trying to figure out how to follow the laws, you can't figure it out because the words they're using do not mean what they think they mean. So back to the knife thing, it's like, am I drinking a pop? Am I drinking a soda? Am I having a Coke? Depends on where you are in the world. There is not a set definition.
And ask for help, right? Listen, the Attorney General's office in New York is still not giving out their guidance on all of the things inside their assault weapon ban post Sandy Hook. They still won't help define what makes a disqualified weapon versus what is a disqualified weapon. It's ridiculous. No guidance from the Attorney General's office there.
Yeah, and they're like, well, whoever's the first case, and deciding what a judge decides or the jury is not a way to figure that out.
Somewhat like the definition of pornography back in the 1980s. Well, I can't exactly explain what it is, but I'll know it when I see it.
There you go. Yep.
All right. One more story, and we're coming close to the time we have. One more story that I really want to talk about, and that is this. And that's there's a proposed law in Kansas where they want to ban ghost guns. I'm really kind of up in arms about this. This has been going on throughout the country. Oh, I love that, Brooke. Ghost guns or 80% lowers or whatever, you are not going to stop crime by doing this. And the ghost guns they're finding, especially those in California, what they're terming as ghost guns, more often than not, are somebody's stolen a Glock and they've taken a Dremel and they've wiped out the serial number. They're calling that a ghost gun, or they've taken a file and filed down the serial number. These are not homemade guns that the police are getting. These are guns where somebody's rubbed the serial number off, and now the police are calling it ghost guns because they cannot track it by the serial number. True homemade guns are actually fairly rare. They're getting picked up. There are some, I'm not going to lie to you, there are some, but they're a vanishingly small number. And all of a sudden, it's all the rage in legislatures. We've got to ban these things.
Yeah, that was just in the Connecticut governor's bill, is against ghost guns. And during the 16 hours testimony we just went through, all they focused on was homemade guns. And it's just like, homemade guns, like you just said, itty bitty tiny smidgen of the guns out there that are actually used in crime. And every time people brought this up, they asked the legislators or they asked the anti-gun groups, so where is the statistics that you're using that say this is such a problem that we need to address it? And none of them could come up with anything. It's like, it's a made-up thing, and the word ghost makes you think, who's hiding from me?
Yeah. I love it because it's a ghost gun. Does that mean it's a gun that's passed on and we can't see it anymore? Or is it a gun that a ghost uses for ghost crime? You know, is it that? What I don't know where the ghost gun crime comes from, but I love when they describe it as the ghost gun is untraceable. Well, it must be invisible then, because I can't take this object like John just held up in his hands, and I can't trace it. I can't do the ballistics on it. I can't take the firing pin imprint. It's untraceable. I must not be able to lift fingerprints off of it because it's untraceable. I may never, ever be able to determine where it came from.
I know what they finally got the Glock 7 that they were talking about in the Die Hard movies. Yes, the Die Hard 2 movie. Yeah.
Dallas Airport.
It's worth more than your monthly salary. Yeah.
It's porcelain.
The ghost thing too. Go ahead, John.
I built a lot of these. Like I got a Polymer 80 here, built probably about 20 of these, and I got a few of these. These are from JSD Supply. These are the SIG P320s, and I have a Ghost Gunner 3 and a Ghost Gunner 2, which is from and it's my hobby. And there's a lot of people's hobby that it is. In fact, NBC just did a hit piece on Jordan Benrow and JSD like 2 nights ago, and they were incredibly inaccurate. And one of the things that NBC did is they re-edited what Jordan said to make it look like he was saying something else. I have the raw video and I have the NBC thing. And what I did is I played the NBC version of it, and what he actually said. They played it to make it look like he was saying, yeah, guns are like lawn chairs. You just pay cash for them. And what they actually said was, like, what's the process of buying it? And he described, I sell parts, and parts, you can pay cash for. You don't have to pay a check for cash. It's just like buying a lawn chair at Walmart. You're buying gun parts. You can pay whatever the way you want. But they edited it down to make it sound like he was dismissing everything, and it was just really disingenuous of NBC. And it still makes me a little bit mad. It's been a couple days.
Yeah.
John, those guns you build from kits, do you sell them after you build them?
No. No, I got a whole
That's right, folks. Did you hear that? John obeys the law. He understands the law. He's not sick, because that would be manufacturing a firearm without a license, and we already have that law. He's building guns for himself, which has been allowed in this country since 1789.
Yeah, I got a 3D printer, and I print frames. No law is going to be able to stop that. You can go to Micro Center and get a $99 Ender 3 and be able to do everything you can do without the law, without anybody being able to stop you. These laws are just feel-good laws that they're trying to put on the books to appease the anti-gunners.
Exactly right.
It's already against the law to manufacture weapons and sell them without serial numbers. That's already against the law.
Yeah, it's you can't manufacture them with the intent to sell.
Right. All right, we're plumb out of time. I'm sorry. But before we take off, I have to do what I do every week. And I'm going to start with you, Brooke. I want to, if you would, please tell us about a Great Start Shooting School, where people can find out more about you. And if you want to plug something, now is your chance.
All right, so Brooke Cheney, a Great Start Shooting School here in Harwington, Connecticut. I teach one-on-one because I love doing that in small classes. So, because I was so disappointed when I got training initially in a huge class. So that's what I do, is I teach one-on-one firearms instructor to take you from clueless to confident. And you can find me on Facebook, YouTube, on the web at agsss.com. On Saturday night, since we're here on a Saturday, on my Facebook personal accounts and school accounts, I do a thing called Suicide Prevention Saturday, because 2 out of every 3 gun deaths you hear about are a suicide. Tonight, I have a special guest, Sarah Albrecht from Hold My Guns, and so it's going to be longer than normal, but I always love letting people know about mental health awareness when it comes to firearms and how important it is for us to have plans. And DC Project, we're always looking for members across the country. So go to dcproject.info. Wait, it's right there. I don't even know. It's always backwards here. And I think those are all the things I wanted to plug. So, 9 p.m. Eastern for Suicide Prevention Saturday. So come and watch that as well.
How can they find that? Where do they go to find Suicide Prevention Saturday?
All right. So Suicide Prevention Saturday goes on my A Great Start Shooting School website, YouTube channel. It's also on my personal Facebook page, Brooke Cheney, and it is also on A Great Start Shooting School Facebook page, the actual school page, and it just goes live at 9 p.m. Eastern. So any of those channels, it will be on.
All right. John, I'm going to move to you next. If you would please tell people where they can find your stuff, and if there's anything you want to plug now, Bud, here's your chance.
Yeah, amaland.com is where you can find all my writing at. You can also find me on YouTube at John Crump News. And in John Crump Live, I do a live stream at 5 p.m. Eastern every Monday through Friday. And we have guests from all around all around everywhere, and we just have fun on that. And I do want to plug the DC Project. I've met a lot of people from the DC Project, from Diane Mueller, Cheryl Todd, all those wonderful women, and they are doing a bang-up job at protecting rights, and they're one of my favorite pro-gun organizations out there. So, right. 2 plug for the DC Project this week.
Very cool. Mike, you got anything you want to plug? Well, we need to talk Arms Room Radio, man. We need to talk the rundown. What else you got?
Quickly, we'll just do it all right. 5 p.m. Weekly Eastern time. I think we're right up against back-to-back with you, Paul. So it's a wonderful tie-in over on Oplands. Arms Room Radio, the anchor that started it all. ArmsRoomRadio.com. Live show coming up today, Saturday at 3. Here are some 50 stations around the country. And then I don't want to be the only one that didn't do it, so I'm going to plug DC Project because they are a great organization. And if you're not involved, you should be.
Very cool.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
And for me, I want to go ahead and plug the DC Project as well, because my wife, my beautiful wife, Susan, is the South Dakota State Director for the DC Project. And I am pleased as punch that I get to have as much contact with these wonderful folks as I do. And we are going to be having a lot of contact the middle of May with these people when we're going down to Atlanta to do the women's meet and mingle. I think a lot of the ladies from the DC Project are going to be there, and I'm going to be doing some live broadcasts from down there. Looking forward to that. The week after that is the NRA show. Going to be doing some live broadcasts from the NRA show as well. I want to encourage everybody, join me Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Central Time, over on the Polite Society podcast, Facebook and YouTube page, where the Bullet has its during the week home. And then, of course, as you just joined us, on Saturdays, noon Central Time, here on the SAF's page for the weekend edition of the Bullet. Thanks for watching, everybody. We're going to go ahead and shut it down now. You folks have a great weekend. We'll see you again on Monday.